All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a completely impartial, but honestly fascinating look at a highly speculative scenario from the alternative media channel Stoic Stick. They've mapped out this massive hypothetical 2025 to 2026 conflict between the US and Iran. Now, just to be clear right up front, we aren't here to take sides or endorse any political views. We're just here to break down their really dense viral narrative. Because, regardless of your politics, the military and economic mechanics they propose here, they actually reveal a whole lot about the terrifying realities of modern warfare.
So, here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll cover the pretext for war, disputing the casualty numbers, the economics of drones, the oil supply choke point, some religious theories in conflict, and finally, the regime change dilemma.
Okay, starting off with Section 1, the pretext for war and mapping out this speculative timeline.
So, to make this whole scenario feel real, the creator actually grounds it in recent history before spinning off into pure what-if territory. The timeline kicks off with the very real 2016 JCPOA nuclear agreement, and then the U.S. withdrawal in 2018. But here's where we take a hard left into an alternate reality. The source imagines this fictional, massive stealth bomber strike in June 2025. They call it Operation Midnight Hammer. The idea is that B-2 stealth bombers drop bunker busters to completely wipe out underground nuclear enrichment facilities. And that event, that's the spark that ignites our full-blown speculative war by February 2026.
Moving right along to Section 2, disputing the casualty numbers and the whole information war aspect.
Now this part is super interesting. The source dives deep into the information war of this hypothetical conflict. In their scenario, they heavily dispute initial media reports claiming that a staggering 30,000 protesters were killed in just 48 hours. In the narrative, that's the moral pretext used to justify regime change. But 30,000? That is an absolutely massive number. And the creator really scrutinizes whether that's even physically possible in the modern era.
And they use strict logistics to counter that claim. First off, they point out a total lack of satellite imagery showing mass casualties. Plus, think about the sheer amount of heavy machinery you'd need to clear 30,000 bodies from a city over a single weekend. It's mind-boggling. Second, even with internet access supposedly being snuck into the country, there's literally zero civilian smartphone footage. Make it make sense, right? Finally, and this really puts it into perspective, they point out that 30,000 dead in 2 days, mostly using light arms, would actually rival the bloodiest days of World War I. So the creator argues that realistically, the true death toll in this fictional scenario would logistically have to be in the single thousands, not tens of thousands.
All right, Section 3, the economics of drones and the realities of asymmetric warfare.
This is what the source considers the absolute tactical heart of the conflict, the crazy financial asymmetry of modern combat. The creator literally calls the Shahed 136 the AK-47 of the drone world. And honestly, it fits. They describe these drones as highly versatile engineering masterpieces. They're incredibly cheap, they have a massive 2,500-kilometer range, and get this, they can easily be hidden and launched straight from ordinary shipping containers on the back of a truck.
And here is the core military dilemma in a nutshell. Imagine a financial seesaw. On one side, you've got the offensive Shahed drone, costing a mere 20 to 30 grand. On the other side, the absolute gold standard of defense, the THAAD interceptor missile, which runs an estimated $10 to $15 million per unit. The source argues that swarms of these cheap drones are launched simply to exhaust the expensive interceptor stockpiles, eventually blinding the billion-dollar defense radars entirely. I mean, that is a terrifying return on investment.
And when you look at the production numbers, you see exactly why the defending forces are totally on the clock. You can print money, but you literally cannot print complex missiles overnight. With U.S. manufacturing reportedly capped at around 96 THAAD interceptors and 600 PAC-3 interceptors a year, the creator points out that a military superpower mathematically cannot sustain a defense against an adversary churning out thousands of low-cost drones every single month. It's just a numbers game, and the math heavily favors the cheap, mass-produced offense.
Which brings us to Section 4, the oil supply choke point and the threat to global logistics.
Shifting over to global economics, the video highlights just how incredibly fragile the Strait of Hormuz is. The stakes are massive, 20 million barrels of oil every single day. That is roughly 1 in every 5 barrels worldwide passing through one narrow geographical choke point. To put that into perspective for us, a disruption here doesn't just mean a localized war. It means the price of your gas, your groceries, and global shipping skyrockets literally overnight. You'd feel the shockwaves of this immediately in your wallet.
So, how does this actually play out? It's kind of a brilliant, terrifying logistical trap. Step 1. The defending nation just announces the threat of strikes against passing ships. That's it. Step 2. Maritime insurance companies panic and immediately spike their premiums through the roof. Step 3. Navigating the strait becomes totally commercially unviable. According to the video, you can effectively close the strait without fighting a massive naval engagement. They even mention non-Chinese ships bizarrely having to pretend to be Chinese just to pass safely. With oil stuck, refineries shut down, and prices could easily double globally without a single shot actually being fired.
Okay, Section 5, Religious Theories and Conflict, diving into the ideological motivations. Now we're getting into one of the source's most controversial and highly speculative assertions, the idea that religious ideology heavily dictates the timing and targets of these military ops. To get what the creator is arguing, we got to talk about Purim real quick. Purim is a Jewish holiday commemorating the saving of the Jewish people from Haman, who was a hostile official of the ancient Persian Empire, as told in the Book of Esther.
The source uses this religious context to stitch together this wild, speculative historical pattern. Look at the dates they plotted out. They point out that the end of the Gulf War in '91, the start of the Iraq War in 2003, and the Libya intervention in 2011 all loosely aligned with the calendar dates of Purim. So the creator projects this onto their fictional 2026 war, suggesting the start date would be intentionally tied to this holiday. They're basically arguing that ancient religious narratives and modern geopolitical strategy are deeply intertwined. They even cite their own polling data to claim there's much higher support for the conflict among certain demographics based entirely on this ideological foundation.
And finally, Section 6, the regime change dilemma and the endgame constraints.
All right, so what's the ultimate conclusion here? The video argues that a traditional military victory, or forcing a regime change, is practically impossible. Why? Well, geography and logistics mostly. The country is described as a literal geographical fortress with insanely high elevations and zero viable land borders for a conventional ground invasion. On top of that, any airlift supply lines would be sitting ducks for cheap, swarming drones. The creator vividly calls them IEDs coming from the sky. Combine all that with an estimated 120,000 to 190,000 active defensive personnel, and traditional boots-on-the-ground strategies are basically neutralized.
So, what's actually left on the table? The creator leaves us with 3 very grim, totally unappealing outcomes for an invading superpower. Option 1. Use nuclear weapons, which, by the way, might still fail because of the deep mountain topography. Option 2. Just accept complete defeat and withdraw. Or Option 3. Settle into a prolonged, messy, forever war where the entire global economy is constantly held hostage by fluctuating oil prices and cheap drone strikes. Literally none of these are a victory.
Which brings us to one final, really thought-provoking question based on everything the source threw at us today. In an era defined by $20,000 drones, asymmetric warfare, and incredibly fragile global economic choke points, is conventional military dominance a thing of the past? It's a sobering perspective on how modern conflict is shifting, right? It really leaves you pondering just how fragile superpower dominance might actually be. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you. Catch you next time.